Good afternoon, Beeville. This is Cindy Clark from PAC-B TV, and we are here this afternoon with Chris Campolito, who is the athletic director in Baldwinsville, and Jim Goulet, who is one of the facilitators of the show that we're going to be talking about today, which is the Athletic Hall of Fame. Welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for spending some time with us.
Welcome, thank you.
Chris, what I'm going to do, we'll start right out of the gate.
Sure.
How did this whole activity, of the awards ceremony, I know they had it many years ago, but how did it come back, and where are we now? And just tell us a little bit about it.
So from my time as the athletic director, which is back in 2012 when I started, they would have the old Hall of Fame wing, and there was a new Hall of Fame wing, and you'd see these pictures up, and you would just walk by them, look at them, but not really think too much of them because we didn't have that Hall of Fame as active as it was in the past. And after year, you're sitting there looking at, wait a second, we've got some athletes here that we need to look at recognizing and putting a team together, putting kind of a vision together. It was started, so there was obviously a blueprint to that, but it was really trying to get the wheels in motion. Our superintendent has been very active with this and supportive. And putting a team together to make it work, and that's what we accomplished this past June.
Well, I have to say, I went to the ceremony that you had last year, and it was impressive to say the
really
least.
Was.
I guess you don't know what to expect, but it went above and beyond expectations. It was very, very good. So now, I presume that there's some form of a criteria, a nominating process or something. Could you kind of walk us through that as well?
We have three categories right now, and we've got the student athlete, we've got a coach, and we've got a contributor. For the coach and athlete, you'd have to be 10 years removed from graduating, and we have a process that you fill out. Basically, it's kind of a survey or a questionnaire discussing accolades, the sports that were played, awards, state, could be section, anything that we could look at as a group and have a conversation about. And the biggest part was just to make sure that we're looking back at athletes that we could have missed between that little hiatus that we had. And it's a pretty simple process. Again, the biggest piece is really getting it up and running. And since it was such a great event last year, kind of springboarded into, this year, when are you going to open it up? And, that kind of got people thinking about it. But those are the three criteria: student, athlete, coach, and contributor.
Okay. So, and then how many openings do you have every year? I mean, is it unlimited, or do you have like 10 or 5 or 15 every year, or how's that going to be?
So right now we're looking to we don't want to max it out, but we are looking at playing a little bit of a catch-up game.
Okay.
However, we still want to make sure everybody can go through the process. Yes, there are a lot of student athletes that in our minds we could look to highlight from the past. However, we want to make sure that we get the right individuals that are in there to have that conversation. We also want to make sure that we're not taking too much away from the athletic banquet, because we do piggyback the Athletic Hall of Fame on top of our athletic banquet, because it's so important to make sure that we can link, the past, present, and future together to make sure that, you can sit down and look at, a Jason Grilly, who's a professional baseball player, and, wow, he went to Baldwinsville, he did it, I can do it, so we want to make sure that we have that, that time frame for this.
Well, I think it's an inspiration to anybody, whether they're an athlete or involved just in the facilitating of it and working and trying to come up with the right candidates or approving the right candidates for this banquet. Now, Jim, let me ask you. I know that this has been a passion of yours because you're a former teacher and a former coach. What got you heavily involved in this?
Well, for years, it was kind of an informal selection process at a coaches' meeting at the end of the year. And then there came a point where they just stopped doing it. And yet we had terrific athletes coming through. Jason Grilly, that Chris mentioned, was one. And I'm thinking, we got to get this going again. So I kept pushing and got nowhere. And then finally, we've got a nice system down now where we can recognize athletes. And we also last year recognized some of the old timers, people who
Yes.
competed back in the 40s and 50s that got left behind. You know, when they started the Hall of Fame, they selected some local people who were prominent in the community, who were outstanding athletes, and they all deserved to be there. But they left people behind that weren't quite as well known in the community. So we've been kind of going through old yearbooks and interviewing people in their 80s and 90s and trying to figure out, who should be at it. So we've got some old timers, we've got young women, young men, coaches, and so on. And for a long time, there were no women in the Hall of Fame, no girls. Karen Honan became the first, and then Terry Miro got in. And then finally, this past year, we've got 3 young ladies in there.
Oh, I remember that.
And we're planning to, catch up with that, too, as we go forward.
Oh, I think that's great. I think it's such a wonderful program for the school, because it not only involves the school, but the community, everybody. I mean, it's just a big community event, as evidenced by the awards ceremony last year, which, like I said, was so well done, so well thought out, so well planned, and so gut-wrenching and heartwarming. I mean, I love to see Leo Johnson, because he was in our heyday, Jim, and it was such an honor for him, because he was such a strong proponent for wrestling and sports, and helping bring Beeville back onto the map, so to speak, the days, the glory days, and then bringing them forward to where we are now. So anyways, if people want to nominate somebody, how do they do that?
So
What's the best way?
It's live right now.
Okay.
So if you go to the beeville.org website, through athletics, you can't miss it. It's on the bottom. It says Community Athletic Hall of Fame, and you would just click on that, and it's more or less a sheet survey where you can click in all the information. You can attach documents if you'd like, elaborate about the student athlete, the coach, the contributor, and that will get funneled into a program for us to look at and to view. It is open we opened it up last Friday, and it'll stay open until January 31st, and that's when our committee, will reconvene in February, and we'll start to kind of go through our process to narrow down the selections. And as Jim mentioned, we are looking at, the males, females, are seasoned, old timers, as Jim said, athletes, so that we go through our process and have dialogue and conversation, which is the fun part, it really is.
Now, the dialogue and conversation, is that with each other or with the candidates?
That's with our group.
Okay.
That's with our group
Okay.
that we meet over at the high school, and we've got our notes, and each member will take a couple athletes to discuss, and they'll summarize their accolades, just to have a conversation, and we'll go through our process to look at who would move on. Sometimes there might be another meeting, depending on how in-depth you get. As mentioned, with having a little bit of a time off, we've had a lot of athletes that we need to get through to make sure that they are recognized. A lot of phenomenal athletes and coaches in particular. So that's really kind of one of our focuses is looking at that.
And just because somebody doesn't make it this year doesn't mean that they won't make it at another time.
Correct.
Because you can't have 50 people.
Correct.
You have to be a little careful there.
Sure.
But now, once you start the process, when do you estimate how long do you think it'll take before you make your determination?
So I would say, and if I'm correct, I want to say by the beginning, we'll have conversation between February, March, and by the end of March, early April, we'll have our selection so that we can make it public and then really start to get the planning together to reach out, to let them know about the date. We do a little ceremony prior in the library, which is nice, and it's nice to bring people back to the high school, and we really had a nice little celebration so that they could at least see their plaque, have some conversation. It's kind of a meet and greet, prior to the athletic banquet, which is in June.
Oh, that's when it is, in June.
Correct.
Okay, I didn't quite remember when it was. Well, I think this is a terrific event, and I'm so happy that it's being revitalized. And thanks, Jim. Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate what your dedication and your loyalty and your perseverance, because Beeville has a lot to offer.
They
You know,
do.
they really do. Athletics has always been such a big and important part here, and it's nice to see that the ones, you know, the outstanding ones, in any manner, shape, or form, whether they're the athletes or the coaches or whatever the case might be, that they get the recognition, because so many of them are almost like unsung heroes.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's so nice to see everybody, you know, people being recognized for everything they did for this community, because that's all a part of making what our community is today.
Absolutely.
And I thank both of you and your group, and I so look forward to this year's ceremony.
Sure.
Thank you so
And
much.
Cindy, if I could just add,
Sure,
because I think this
sure.
is where it's heartfelt for me.
Okay.
And I think Jim as well, and Jim mentioned this earlier, but Ken Ike Burton was one of our members that we did honor this year, and he had some health, you know, concerns that you know he was going through, and we were able to talk to his family through this process, and we were able to get him inducted into the Hall of Fame. And like I said, he was not doing well health-wise. June is when we had our athletic banquet, and unfortunately, by the end of June, he did pass away. But you read his obituary, and one of the last things that he said was recently inducted into the Baldwinsville Athletic Hall of Fame, which really meant a lot for me to be able to do that for him while he was here. For, you know, he knew he was being recognized, he just wasn't able to make it. And I think that's really what this is all about, and making sure that we recognize our athletes and coaches, contributors, while they're here, you
Yes,
know, so
yes,
that
I
they
agree.
can have that. But I did want to share that because it was touching, you know, and you know, speaking with his family, they thought it was great, and for it to be mentioned in his obituary was pretty cool.
What a
So,
wonderful legacy all the way
Yeah,
around.
really was cool.
That's what it's all about, huh,
Ike's
Jim?
brother was in maybe the first class inducted, Jim Burton.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he played minor league baseball, was an outstanding ball player. And everybody I talked to said his brother Ike was better than he was. So we finally caught up with him.
We did. We really
You're right.
did.
I think
you
that's
know.
great. I just
Well,
think it's great.
It's important. It really is. And there's no better place to do that in Baldwinsville, in the community, and just linking that past with our present and future is tremendous. It's huge. It's great.
It is.
you
It
know,
is. I
so.
couldn't agree with you more. I thoroughly agree. But again, thanks for being here today, and I really look forward to this year's ceremony. Thanks again, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate it.